right, so on tap for us this afternoon is an exciting conversation about how a leading restaurant brand, Dine Brands, is transforming customer experience with AI. And so we're going to hear from Chris Padilla next to me, who is the CIO of the company. And so one of the stories he's going to focus on is really how he and his team transformed the technical support across their 3,500 locations with the help of AI and with a partnership with our team. So he's going to talk about foundational work they've done to be prepared to use AI for this project, and how they've maintained, throughout this work, focus on exceptional customer service and customer experience, which is core to their brand experience. So what we always do at these sessions is we want to make sure we set a goal for key takeaways. So you've come all this way, hopefully to learn something or pick up some inspiration. So I want to preview for you 3 key topics and takeaways that you should keep in mind. So again, first of all, the foundational AI capabilities that enabled this type of experimentation and the speed in which they were able to deliver is something we hope to learn. The second takeaway, this is near and dear to my heart, measurable business results, right? I think we're past the point where it's about doing fun and sexy AI experiments. It's like, what is it actually driving? What are the business outcomes? And what are the measurable results? And then again, lastly, customer experience and maintaining and raising the bar. How has Chris and his team been able to make all that happen? So with that being said, so why don't we start actually a little bit, about you, Chris? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks. First of all, Petra, thank you so much for having me on stage today. And I'll tell you, I think when you got started standing up, I thought we were going to do some stretches. You're going to do like the afternoon stretches to get us going. So I've been...
You can still do that if you want. I'll watch you.
So I've been in technology my whole life, and I tell people I'm a second generation technologist. My dad was in IT, and I followed suit. And I found my love for it in franchising in the hospitality space. So I've been in this area for quite some time, from hotels to real estate, and now with restaurants. And I'm really excited to share with you all what we're doing with AWS. But I think there's probably a useful sort of take a back step and just who is Dine Brands for the audience. We bring together 2 iconic Americana brands with IHOP and Applebee's. IHOP got its birth in the 1950s. You saw Applebee's really ramp up to what we know today in the 80s. And in 2007, they were brought together to form what we know as Dine Brands today. Since then, we diversified our portfolio, Fuzzy's Taco Shop, and have really hit the gas pedal on growth accelerators. We call it our dual brands concept, in which we take an Applebee's and an IHOP, put it together in one box, and really accelerate the economics for the franchisees, create choice for the guests, and you do it in a way that you have complementary day parts. You mentioned, we're a franchise-based organization of 3,500 restaurants that's supported with some of the best operators globally, with about 300 of them that bring our brands to life in each and every one of their communities. So overall, our focus is always on building our great brands, driving growth, ensuring excellent operations for those franchisees, and ensuring that they are set up for long-time growth and support. And that's a big reason as to why we're partnering with AWS to help solve some of the problems that they had in operations in the day-to-day.
So one of the most fun aspects of my role at AWS, which is to look after retail and consumer goods businesses, is to see iconic brands that have been around for a long time, not slowing down. I think this is sort of the recipe of success, to say, how do we continue to remain relevant, and how are we actually, super innovative, even though we're operating under an umbrella or a brand umbrella that's has a lot of legacy and a lot of history behind it. So super impressive. And actually, food services, the quick serve restaurant industry, I find it's just been a particular hotbed of innovation. And so AI, of course, if everybody has the bingo card, you can check it off. Here we are. Chris, talk a bit about what caused you, what prompted your team to dive into AI actually as an opportunity to help you deliver a better customer experience? Like, what did that journey look like? Where did you start? What were the motivating factors? How did you get going?
Absolutely. There's definitely an AI counter at this conference, right? So AI. Let's keep that going. I'd say that all of us have had AI go to our frontal lobes in recent years with the change in consumer behavior with the LLMs, right? I think that was a big changing point for us to look within and say we need to reconsider how we are going to market and considering AI as a whole. And so what we ended up doing was back in fall of 2024, about 18 months or so ago, we took initiatives internally to build an AI innovation foundry. And that foundry was designed in a way to have a skunkworks team, 5 people or so, that would help solicit ideas from our employee base of what are different ideas that we can do to help propel and drive productivity AI, whether it's at the corporate level supporting our franchisees, whether it's with our franchisees and their team members driving and optimizing their business, or the guests directly. And we had hundreds of ideas that were coming through. We had excitement from everybody that was reading the consumer news as to what's going on, particularly with Gen AI. And from those hundreds, we had a lightweight and fast and an agile process to move them from an idea to a proof of concept to graduate to being out in market. And so we took those 100 ideas. We failed fast in many of them. We brought 27 of them to that proof of concept stage, and realized that from there, we got to about 9 of them that are actually in market today. So again, hundreds of ideas, 27 proof of concepts in which we developed them in-house in the course of weeks, right? Not months. Failed fast, and we have 9 in market in 18 months. So that's really incredible to go through that in that kind of time period.
So how did that work? Was this sort of a digital suggestion box? Could anybody in the company submit ideas? And then the foundry, was it like a cross-functional team? Were they all engineers or different job types?
Yes and yes. So it was definitely an avenue in which there was, a Dropbox, an email that you can provide your ideas, suggestions. There was a cross-functional team that was set up, and it was opt-in for those that wanted to participate in it to be part of the idea generation and kind of sifting through that. There was a lightweight, I'm going to call it a lightweight council, but it was more of an ideation committee, right, as to how do you bring that to life. And when an idea came through and we wanted to move forward on it, it had to have a business factor. It had to have outcome based. You have to think through what your success factors could be, and to go from there. And so a key part of this was that it wasn't going to take months. It was literally like to design, build in weeks to figure out how do we move forward on it.
So it actually reminds me, a number of years ago at Amazon, my team ran a similar exercise, and we did at the time, we tried something where we said, instead of submitting these like elaborate ideas, submit a tweet. So we forced them to a short character count, and it was awesome because you get ideas from people that actually want to submit something and that are motivated, and it kept it somewhat manageable. I still wish in hindsight that would have been a perfect use for AI, right? To like dump all that into an engine and just have it parse out for you, like what are the most common ones. So, I'll have to keep that example in mind when people say, what would you do different with AI today? But love that format. I'm sure, though, as you got going, it wasn't, so you whittled it down, and then what? Were there some hot debates about where to get going? What were the initial challenges?
Yeah, so we whittled it down. We had 2 sort of notable ones that kind of got brought to life. We had a recommendation engine that was really consumer facing, and it was designed in a way to drive upsell, cross-sell on our digital channels. And that was a really great benefit of driving tangible results for driving increased sales and traffic for our franchisees, as also creating a moment of delight for our consumers and building on that platform. And so that was a good step 1. Step 2 was one that we looked internally, and this was something truly near and dear to my heart because I was running our in-restaurant help desk, in which when you're running restaurant operations, ever so often there's always a hiccup with technology, whether your point of sale goes down, or your internet's down, or your back of house KDS, kitchen display, is not working correctly. And you typically get an excited, a passionate manager on duty that's calling in, trying to get to resolution as fast as possible. And that's really where, our partnership started to blossom, of how can we find a way to accelerate first call resolution and equip those technicians that are on the front line answering those phone calls with just the right information at just the right time to be able to help aid in relaxing that manager that's calling and getting them to closure. And so for us, that was a big win. And what I would say the biggest challenge, right, the question you asked in that process, was ensuring we had the data set up in the way that made sense to be able to consume it and to be able to activate that chat bot that we designed, as well as the people change management. And the beauty of where we are in where AI is transitioning from a consumer standpoint is, when we designed a chatbot that was Gen AI based, and we did it with you guys, our technician staff were already accustomed to how to interact with it. So we were able to deploy a chatbot with zero training, with all the same information that they're accustomed to. And it was a massive uplift, mainly because of that.
So I'm going to go back, maybe if you wouldn't mind, just a little bit more before we dive deeper into the what. So you chose essentially tech support, internal tech support, as the problem to solve, or to optimize. Did you, when you selected that particular topic, like, were there a set of criteria in terms of business impact? Like, how were you thinking about measuring? Was it reduction in manual labor, or actual dollar impact? And I ask because every session I do here, lots of questions arise around, like, hey, how do I convince my CEO that it's worthwhile doing it? How high is the bar in terms of business impact? And, like, how much can I experiment before I have to show the money?
Yeah, we thought about it in a couple different vectors, right? First, our help desk support for in-restaurant is actually its own separate P&L. Our restaurants pay into that. It's an optional support aspect. And so we have SLAs that are tied to them. So we have very clear SLAs and metrics that are driven of success to our customers. And because of that, we track them religiously to make sure that we're delivering to that. And we saw a massive opportunity to take our knowledge bases and our disparate knowledge bases, both the one we have as well as some of our SaaS partners that we leverage, and reduce the time it takes for a technician to find the right information to address. And the key metric that we landed on was number of tickets resolved per hour. And so we used a leading indicator intentionally, because the lagging indicators are ones that we hold everyone accountable to: the average handle time, first call resolution, breach tickets, those and guest or customer satisfaction. And by really honing in on, can we meaningfully increase the number of tickets resolved per hour per agent, and we do it in a way that abstracts out, one agent worked 40 hours one week, another agent worked 20 hours a week. And it really helped even the playing field of looking at what success could look like.
Yeah, it's probably the cleanest input metric that you can take. And then everything else, as you say, cascades off of that in terms of cost. Got it.
That's right.
All right. So we're starting to see this arc, company-wide gathering of ideas. You had a methodology for getting to a point where you chose a project. You started to talk about really the transformation that was necessary. Let's stay on that a little bit more. Like, how did you go about now, setting the stage for evolving, tech support, across your franchises?
Yeah. So I would say it was two pieces to that. The first was make sure the data was where it needed to be, right? And it was function. And one of the reasons why we started first with our internal technicians or agents, as I keep interchanging those words, was because our knowledge bases were designed for them first, right? Our customers, the restaurant managers or the above restaurant staff that are calling in, they were accustomed to talking to a human, and we didn't have a knowledge base for self-service for them directly, which means that a lot of those knowledge base articles had franchisee specific internal details to help support it. So we wanted to ensure that we started with the low-hanging fruit to build and validate that we could eat our own dog food on the concept first. And that's why we started internally with those technicians. The second piece that we learned along the way was leveraging existing tools, right? So they use ServiceNow already for knowledge base. So how do we integrate directly into that? We use Okta for authentication and security. So ensure that's there so it's commonplace for them. And then Microsoft Teams for communication. And I think that was the aha moment, because when we started this journey of building this chatbot, we actually designed it in a way that that had a website that they would go to that was separate, and that was enough friction to stop people from utilizing the tool. And so when we integrated the experience directly into Microsoft Teams, and it was a chat with every other chat that they're using on a daily basis, the uplift to the experience was overnight.
So you were saying in the old model, they had to jump to a separate website, and then you just saw the drop off right then and there. And then as a result, they weren't exploring even the content that was good at the other destination.
That's right. Yeah.
They were okay.
Yep. And so once we put it into a vehicle that made sense, that worked with the way they operated on a daily basis, the frontline technicians, immediate uplift. And when we designed this process in a pilot. It was every step of the way was had tons of methodology to it. So we made sure to test, learn, adapt each step of the way, and that's how we got to that next phase.
Well, what was the elapsed time for the whole project?
So the initial proof of concept took weeks, right? That's one where we learned that the website function wasn't gonna work for us. We then redesigned the build. That's how we partner with AWS to build it on top of Q Business. And from there, we got a version of it that was pretty much the final state of it within probably another few weeks, call it 3-4 weeks. And that allowed us to do our pilot phase. And one of the things that was important to me as a part of this is making sure that we were regimented and we had a case study and we were comparing one quarter versus another quarter of data against a population of agents to understand if we're going to see that lift on that success measure that we were focused on.
Did you have a methodology for picking those early adopters? You had like a trial of how many did you start with out of 3,500 franchisees?
So it was an entire population of franchisees, right? So we enable it for all domestic for all those participating in our help desk. For the technicians, so the folks that were going to take advantage of the tool, we thought of the population of technicians in 3 different cohorts. The first cohort being, technicians that have joined us from 0 to 1 year. Those are your new technicians. Those are ones that are probably still ramping up on our technology, on our franchise organization. The second grouping is what we coined our productive technician, which is somewhere between 1 year and 2 years of employment. And then our seasoned technicians were anybody over 3 years. And we picked those groups as we studied the data. So we actually went in and looked at them pre-tool and said, what is their productivity rate? And how do we think about breaking up our cohorts? And we selected folks from each of those cohorts when we did our study.
Super interesting. Did you have a hypothesis as to where you could see the biggest lift? And was that proven or disproven?
Yeah, so the hypothesis was initially targeted on new technicians because there's a pretty high attrition rate in the help desk in general, right? I think folks move on. They either move on within our organization or outside, and so you're constantly cycling and bringing in new technicians. And so our goal initially was, how do we get them ramped up and be as productive as that sweet spot of what we believed were our most productive agents? We found that we proved out the hypothesis, but we also discovered something else in this process. And it was that those seasoned technicians, those that have been around for 3+ years and they're in a balanced state at the organization, over time they start to drop in productivity and match those new technicians. And so what we learned by equipping this tool, we actually rose both of those cohort bases to be as consistent as that sweet spot of those middle group. And I think it was around up to 34% more productivity versus their peers. And that was a great aha moment. We loved it because we weren't necessarily chasing, we're going to drive higher productivity across the board. It was, how can we give an even playing field and make everybody operate, in a consistent manner.
I mean, it's actually an incredibly sophisticated segmentation, and fascinating that there's sort of a bit of a senioritis happening with your older cohort. Did you find that you needed to use different strategies to help drive adoption, or like did those technicians have a choice, or was this the new mode that they had to use?
They were voluntold to join the study. But the beauty of it is once they got involved in it, they were the ones advocating for it. They were the ones giving suggestions of how we can tweak it and how we can change the responses. We heard from them that there was a benefit to add annotations in the responses because you still want to reference the knowledge base articles. From our standpoint to do audit's probably too aggressive a word, but for us to check to see if the cases that were being resolved were the ones that were associated with it, we had them take some extra steps of putting notes within the ticket within ServiceNow so that we can go in afterwards and introspect and understand and to learn what we can do differently. But the litmus test, the anecdotal litmus test of whether or not we were on the right direction was when the technicians that were not part of the study started asking, when can we have that?
I think this is at Amazon, we always say, right, like, your users are going to vote with their feet. So, if they indeed demand to use it because they hear good results from their colleagues, that's your sign that it's working. Could you talk a bit more about what was involved from a technical perspective and how you worked with the AWS teams? Like, did you have to prepare your foundational data more, or did you discover any other, unexpected additions or opportunities along the way?
Yeah, so building on top of Amazon Q, first and foremost, I think when we went through that process, we wanted to make sure that it was following all our internal, security guards and safeguards, and that's why Okta was a part of the mix in that process.
Is this for identity management?
Yeah, that's right. And it's something that was not a new thing to learn. It was all tools that everybody was leveraging existing. The element that got the most list was integrating directly into Teams. And what I would say is that the clear benefit to all this for when we went down this process was just to make it as simple and easy as possible. And so actually the knowledge base article elements of this, we were already doing that. We were cleaning up the data, and that was part of our regular hygiene. And so there wasn't a massive lift to adjust that going forward. The opportunity that we discovered was how do we start to ingest and integrate third-party knowledge bases in which we might have to be scraping them on our own. So we have certain SaaS partners that we were leveraging, and that was the learning when we were going through the pilot period.
And then since, you have a very strong methodology, I'm certain this is part of your project plan, but in the future, of course, you have to enhance the data as you roll out new service needs or new opportunities. Like, how is that modeled? Like, how are you keeping this solution fresh?
Yeah, so there's a regular hygiene of updating the data from the LLM, and we're doing it in such a way that it will stay relevant and fresh on a regular basis. I'll tell you, we talked earlier about success metrics. I told you how we had an internal tracker. Just last week, we were talking to some franchisees across both of our main brands, IHOP and Applebee's, and they came up to me and they said, Chris, last year was the best year that I've seen in decades of the operation for the help desk. And to me, like that is highly attributed to rolling out this platform.
Yeah, I'm so amazing. That's a great compliment to get from a colleague. Let's stay on this topic of business outcomes a little bit more. So you gave us a few of the input metrics already. So getting the tickets handled or closed, that number up. What about now follow the thread all the way to ultimately how is this good for end consumers and restaurant? Talk a bit more about the multifaceted way in which you measure the impact or success of a project like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main indicator that we're tracking for the project was productivity. So tickets resolved within an hour. The downline metrics that we're focused on was reducing average handle time, so bringing that average handle time down by a percentage or so, having first call resolution go up, so we're getting quicker done resolution times, and having the number of tickets that remain open or even become breached go down to 0. And we achieved that one particularly. So we stopped getting breach tickets as a result of rolling this out. And now the main benefit to the guests, to the restaurant, is that they can go back to doing what they do best, which is servicing our guests and our diners alike. And you're protecting the brand at the end of the day. The brand health is dependent on how often something goes down and goes awry and how quickly that you can get it to resolution. And for me, that's been the best possible test of time to this, is that we're seeing happier customers all around.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than you hear these stories in the media about, you go to a restaurant for product X and it's not available because of, some underlying issue like that. So I do love that. And I think, with all the debates about, what impact that AI has on the industry, on jobs, I think we always sort of make quick reference to, well, it's going to allow us to focus on what matters most. But I think this is an incredibly tangible example, right?
And the other element to this that there was an initial fear from the technicians as, this goal is to eliminate roles. And for our perspective, it wasn't. And we repeated it over and over again that the goal was to get these calls that were coming through resolved faster so we can improve our SLAs overall and allowing them to focus on follow-up for harder, more immediate problems.
So there actually was some of that sort of skepticism and fear.
There was early on, and it was quick. And the way that we brought that down was just communicate often, to communicate to them often that this is about driving guest or customer satisfaction. In this case, our restaurants and the operators, and allowing us to refocus our time on the areas that matter the most, which is usually those more difficult problems that required follow up and shipping hardware and things that can't necessarily get resolved in one call.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. You almost have to do, a bit of internal PR, sort of eliminating that skepticism. Did you do that? Like, do you have like an intranet or other ways in which you share success stories around this to publicize, maybe some of the locations that, suddenly because of these improvements are able to do a better job serving guests? Like, how are you telling that story internally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first is, we would do monthly town halls with that audience, like a monthly department meeting with the help desk staff. And then for the management with that group, we would meet monthly to do call it a business review. We would review key functions. One of those was meeting with our customers on a regular basis and getting feedback from them to how our performance is. And so when you start to tie those all together and show that there's a through line in which we're seeing improved feedback from our customer, we're seeing improved metrics, and we're really tackling those hard problems that we're getting lost in the mix because we had a challenge on first call resolution prior to this tool. It became a win-win all around, and folks kind of got over that hump very quickly.
Did you just so curious about the methodology from the IT team's perspective? Like, did you ever do any sort of drive-alongs? Like, how do you personally or your team familiarize yourself with the day in the life of a technician?
Oh, absolutely. So it's one of the required items for especially management is to ride along, be a part of the call, listen in, understand the actual journey, right, of in this case, the customer being the technician, and what are the challenges in their process. That's how we learned that going to Teams was the right method for us versus using that standalone website.
Yeah, I love that. And at Amazon, we've had that from day one. So sending the executive team to do gift wrap in the FC during the holiday, you really learn very quickly what problems you need to solve.
And to that same token, we have folks on our team live a life in the restaurants as well. And so that you get a new level of appreciation for when a KDS screen goes down and you're on a Saturday morning at an IHOP when you have tickets that you got to run and switch to manual backup mode. You can really appreciate the impact of, what might be as simple as a turn off, turn back on, right?
It's actually a good reminder, I think, and as you're in the market for ideas for AI, send your brightest minds to, any job function, and they'll quickly come up with a list of ideas to use AI.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So, anything in hindsight you would do differently, if you don't mind sharing, or what didn't go so well, where that's a learning you can pass along to the audience?
I would have went faster. The actual developing of the tool, the technology, really quick to do. I intentionally slowed the team down to run that quarter-long case study because I really wanted to understand and make sure that our hypothesis was following through. And I think after 1 month of data, we had enough of a green light to say this is low risk to move forward into the next stage, right? If we ever needed to pull back, it's an easy thing that you can pull back and test and adapt and adjust. But we stayed true to our original plan was to do the full 3 months so we can have a quarter to quarter so that there was enough fluctuation between each month. And while the methodology is firm and it made sense, I think we could have benefited much quicker and benefited, overall if we would have just expanded at a faster rate.
Yeah, it's great advice. I think, we always talk about, is it a one-way door? Is it a two-way door?
I was going to reference that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, speed matters. And sometimes, as you said, you're not going to have all the data, but you might have enough data.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, once we saw the other element that this particular use case helped to do with us is it created a real tangible value and impact. It was one of the first ones of those 9 that are in market today that we saw massive success, and we had it tied very clearly to a return on investment. And it created momentum to move forward on some other initiatives within our company. And so, into that case, from the macro level of the change management around AI and all the innovation that we're doing, it was a big win there as well to get folks like our CFO to be interested in exploring other elements with AI.
So a huge success story for you internally in the company. I love talking about this one because it is such a impactful story that shows, again, AI isn't, it's the cute chatbot on the website. It's, it's actually getting to the core of business problems. And as you said, can make a real impact on, both the bottom line, but also the top line and customer experience. So, congratulations. So a lot of folks at this conference are here to, pick up ideas, seek some inspiration. They heard a lot today. Anything else we haven't talked about, or just practical advice on how to get started for those in the room that are early in the journey, or how to keep going or look for the next project? Like what have we not talked about that you would impart as your wisdom?
Absolutely. One is, before I get into giving specifics of how we can bring this forward and advice for folks in the room, what we loved about this initiative is we created a platform, right? So we created a platform of an AI chatbot that now we can have and be extensible to other areas of our business. So you think about our field staff. So we have field staff that are across the U.S. that have the same problem, the same challenges, which is access to information while they're literally driving from restaurant to restaurant, supporting the staff. And so we can quickly expand what we have today to use the same sort of chatbot facility for them.
So it also sounds like you were sort of modularizing this. Okay.
That's right. And then the same thing is I alluded to it, but the clear next phase for us is how do you bring this forward to the franchisees directly? How do you change their habits to, instead of being giving a phone call to us, to going to a chatbot themselves and answering and resolving their issues? And that in itself is much more people change management than technology, but it's something that we're very much focused on exploring. But as for your question as to what's an offer for advice for the folks, this was a friction area. So how do you focus on the friction areas first and understanding how you can bring that forward and solve it, but also don't boil the ocean, right? Think about existing tools, existing areas in which you can build on top of to solve your problem. And we've talked about it a ton. The methodology was a big part of this success, which is honing in on a success factor and a metric, tuning that success metric. Because that metric that we talked about, productivity, we didn't start there. There was a whole bunch of others that we fell into before that. And then we landed on this one because we realized it was beautifully simple, right? Is if we just focus on this one thing, all these other downstream metrics will see a positive or negative effect on it, and it came to fruition.
I meant to ask you this question earlier. What about like analytics and metrics? Did you, along with this project, also get new ways to inspect what's going on so you have more insights?
We did. So we actually, as an output of this project, we established a whole new way of assessing productivity of the technicians in a agnostic way. And so we actually had a result where our technicians were assigned on a monthly basis in the quartiles to understand where they fell on level of productivity. And it wasn't meant to say that if you were in the lowest quartile and you weren't in the medium, that it was a bad thing. It became a question and a conversation point as a performance.
Or maybe co-ownership in terms of like what's going on. Like,
that's right.
How are we not helping them be more productive?
Yeah, and the one interesting thing that we actually discovered is if you start to quartile folks on productivity, you might assume that, oh, we're gonna hone in on the folks in the lowest quartile. It also allowed us to look at the highest quartile, those that were being overly efficient, and saying, what's going on here?
What shortcuts are being taken?
Right. What shortcuts? Is there a process that's not being followed? In this particular case, is there just a technician that is just focusing on closing tickets? All they're doing is closing tickets. They're not taking phone calls, and it allows you to have a dialogue. It's not saying you're going to be penalized for this, but it's going to be a conversation of saying, hey, here are the practices that we want to grow stronger at, and that has been the most sustainable piece out of this. The chatbot is still being used; folks love it, but that tool in itself, and to your point, that metric of tracking has really changed how our supervisors and managers handle those conversations on a daily basis.
So amazing success story. I think everybody got a ton of takeaways. I love what you said about sort of find where the friction is, find where the pain is, and really hone in on what's a simple problem you can solve and then expand from there versus I'll scattershot, boil the ocean everywhere. So kudos to you. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.